Welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines, coming to you from the West Coast. Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. We have a little one-game slate tonight as March Madness is kicking off here on this Thursday afternoon and evening. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at some of the other awards that are going on right now in the league. And this one, we're taking a look at the MVP specifically, maybe throw in a little Defensive Player of the Year stuff in there for you as well. Some of the stuff we're looking at here. Make sure you do check out Nate's great article on playpicks.com with his player props and best bets in there for you. And make sure to like and subscribe to that page. We are going to cover that Magic and Pistons game for you, as well as bring you another video with some conference winners, division winners, and all that kind of stuff that we are looking at for the rest of this season. So as always, if you do still need a FanDuel or DraftKings account, head to FDPicks.com or DKPicks.com and find those listings in your area, such as what we've got for these MVP odds. Nate, let's get into it.
Yeah, I mean, Joel Embiid has been the favorite for a couple of months now. He's sitting at minus 150. That's down a little bit since the Nuggets beat the Sixers head-to-head. Jokic down has shortened his odds from plus 200 to plus 130, so very close, those two centers once again. Then you have Giannis at plus 800, John Morant, DeMar DeRozan around plus 2,000 as the only other guys. We're probably going to get those fourth and fifth place votes at this point. It's really about the three guys here, really about the two centers. And so MVP voted on by 100 media members, and I got to think that anyone who is part of the new school media and understands advanced metrics is going to be too ashamed to not vote for Nikola Jokic, who leads the NBA in PER, VORP, BPM, DPBM, OPBM, win shares per 48 win shares, offensive win shares, Raptor War, Total Raptor, Offensive Raptor. There's I don't even know what these things mean.
Some Darko in there.
His stats across the board, I mean, even if you just look aside from points, are obviously much higher than Embiid when they went head to head. He did out rebound him, have more assists. Went for 22, 13, and 8, and most importantly, got his team another win. He has been dragging a roster with limited talent all year. Recently, the Nuggets have been playing on short rest almost every single night. It's just incredible what he's done. The overtime performance against the Pelicans, I thought really put a stamp on his MVP candidacy, and that was when I bet at plus 200 and said this guy's getting it. 46, 12, 11, triple double. He went 16 for 22 from the field and scored about 30 points in the fourth quarter and overtime to, again, drag his team to a win. People would say Seth Curry, Tyrese Maxey are probably better than any teammate Jokic has had this year, with Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray still out. Those guys might play a limited role over the final week or two. And now Embiid has Harden with him, which I don't understand why that's not impacting odds more or impacting the narrative more, to say you have a guy who was leading the MVP race before he got injured last year. You add him to the fold, Embiid's numbers go down, and the Sixers are figuring it out. And, how can you just still say Embiid is unquestioned MVP here? And the last point I'll make is just that I don't think the 76ers are really going to close the season strong. I mean, they're sitting in the third seed, and I don't think they want the second seed. I think they are too shook from what happened against Brooklyn to chance getting Brooklyn in the first round. If they're the 2 seed, the 3 seed and 4 seed in the East are a much easier road early on. You can get the Bulls or Cavs probably, and both those teams are backsliding. So, Embiid, unless he's really gunning for his stats, I don't think he's going to finish strong enough. Whereas Jokic, right up until the last day last season, was putting up numbers. He does what he does, and they speak for themselves.
Yeah, no, they do. That's totally fair. I think the point here is just who's voting on it. I mean, that's a great way to start with what we're talking about here. We always have to remember that, Joe Fan isn't the guy or gal betting on this tonight or for the MVP this season or any season, right? It's the people who understand what Raptor is and what Darko is and what offensive win shares per 48 minutes is, et cetera, et cetera. We have an understanding of that as well. But I think, what you're going to be looking at if you are in sort of that advanced place of understanding all those really, super meticulous stats and little things that we started to be able to take into account with these stats to really try to understand how an individual impacts a game. Look, the MVP, it's all the awards in this league are somewhat, vague in terms of what the stipulations are here. What's the criteria we're using? Are you the most valuable player on a good team? Are you the most valuable player in general? Are you the most valuable player just on your team? It's a little bit, it's very broad. So I think you have to start to break it down into, like I said, who is the one deciding, who are the people deciding this award? And you just can't overlook the fact that in roughly all of there's about 37 of these ridiculous sounding stats. Jokic is leading in 33 of them. So, I mean, whatever you want to do with that info, I think the other thing that really comes into play here that it gets brought up as sort of the final point for Jokic, if you do think it's going to be him who wins this award, it's his assists, which are 7th in the league at 8.1. He's 7 feet tall. This is still absurd that we're not completely in awe of this man's ability to pass the ball. And those stats, those 8 points a game, or those 8 assists a game compared to Embiid's roughly 3 or so, right? That means we're talking about another at least 16 points, if not more, if it's a 3-pointer that he's assisting on. So he's averaging roughly 3 points less than Embiid this season, who's leading the league. But then you throw in 16 to 20 extra points that he's getting off of assists. He's contributing to his team's offense more than Embiid is. It's just that simple. I understand he has to rely on someone else to score in order for him to get the assists, but that's even more impressive because he doesn't have his second and third best players on his team available for him in MPJ and Jamal Murray. And Jamal Murray's far and away his second best player. So, the fact that he was doing this without Murray is more impressive than what Embiid was doing without Simmons. They had pretty much the same record throughout the time span that Embiid did not have James Harden on his team. So you're talking about dragging two teams, to where they're at right now, which was the 6th seed at the time that the Sixers didn't have Harden, the 6th seed for the Nuggets as well, where they still stand, and the same record. So, and you could make the argument, obviously their schedules were roughly the same. They still have roughly the same strength of schedule the rest of the season, which is actually really hard. But I think that continues to your point that you made earlier, to just really be another notch on the belt of Jokic, which is he's playing the same comp as Embiid the rest of the way without James Harden on his team. And at this point, the rebounds have to be taken into consideration too, because the Philly's not even a good rebounding team overall. I mean, Embiid, honestly, to his credit, has been a really, really good individual defensive player down low, and has had to come up and really take on, driving to the basket who got past their defenders because there's no Ben Simmons out there. There's not much in the way of defense on the perimeter anymore for Philly. So Embiid's been doing that, which probably definitely leads to him getting a decrease in his rebounds this season as he's coming up to help on guys, which means someone else has to come in behind him and get that defensive rebound if they're going to get the board. So I think all of these things just kind of lead to me. I mean, I already bet Nikola as well. I got him at plus 170 right before the Harden trade. And then obviously his odds got a little bit better, and then they're back down to plus 130. I don't see them going any any longer than that at this point. I think we're going to see it stick around 130. So if you do, there's no reason not to take it. I don't think that, like I said, that gap is going to spread any further in terms of Joel's minus 150 and Jokic's plus 130. So I would still hit it, as I think it's only going to go down right now. If you do like it, the problem with betting on Giannis or Ja at this point, obviously, is just that these two guys have separated themselves and how important they are to their team. I think Giannis, with the same, he's actually got somewhat better stats in terms of those advanced metrics over Embiid. He's leading in a few more categories over Embiid. But it comes down to the fact that he has Drew and Chris, right? And not only Drew and Chris, but to be honest, they have a full team. And even though they've had their injuries, White Dante is not on the team anymore, but he's been there. Grayson Allen's been there. Pat Connaughton, before he got hurt for the last roughly 10 games, was there. Bobby Portis is having the season of his life. So I think, there's plenty of going on in Milwaukee right now where you just can't give it to Giannis. You might consider him a defensive player of the year, where he's plus 550 right now. And the main reason that I would consider that is because the other two guys leading in Bam and Rudy have missed significant games. I mean, Bam missed 25 and Rudy's missed 15. Bam's at plus 140 for that defensive player of the year. Rudy plus 140 as well. And then Giannis plus 550. So, with him missing far fewer games than those 15 and 25 Rudy and Bam missed respectively, and putting up very, very similar numbers on defense, even though the Bucks, they were a pretty bad defensive team for a bit, have come back to life a little bit as well. I still think that, there's reason to believe in Giannis specifically because he's played so many games for his team this season.
Yeah, the defensive player of the year is an interesting question because of those 25 missed games. Otherwise, Bam would be a slam dunk, I think. Yeah. And I think the voter fatigue with Rudy, combined with the fact that recently the Jazz have actually been worse slightly in their last 12 games with him on the floor. They have a worse defensive rating. But yeah, he's won the award 3 times already. He's not having his best season. He's also missed 14 games, I believe. 15 games. So I would think you might still want to bet on Bam. It's slightly below the cutoff, I guess, that technically they don't even make them eligible if you miss about 30 games. But I mean, Rob Williams, Jaren Jackson Jr., both impressive numbers lately. They're long odds, but I think it's team defense to a degree. And it's just kind of a rising star in both of those guys who are just making their way. But I mean, yeah, just a couple more points about MVP. The Jokic, you mentioned his rebounding and what he has to do for his team. And I think some of those advanced metrics include how much he's improved defensively, going from one of the worst pick and roll defenders to one of the best just because of his IQ out there. I mean, the net rating with both these teams, Jokic has missed only 7 games this season. His team went 2-5. The only 2 wins are against the lowly Rockets, and they eked out a win over the Pacers, who were shorthanded. Whereas the Sixers, I mean, the last time Embiid missed a game, Tyrese Maxey carried them to a win over the Grizzlies. I mean, both teams about a -7 net rating without their stars, but they went head-to-head, if we remember, all the way back in November. Embiid sat, Jokic was injured. The Sixers won by 14 points because Maxey and Seth Curry had 20+.
Right.
Again, much better teammates. It's just clearly he has a better supporting cast. And Jokic is still carrying his team to the same position. I think I agree with you. If you're going to bet a defensive player of the year, you should take Giannis because it's such a historic MVP race right now, and you almost want to give him the consolation prize. And right. his advanced metrics are very impressive, and those 2 guys listed above him just a little problematic because of all the games missed, and because Rudy, again, just not necessarily up to his usual snuff.
Yeah, and I think really, it's kind of worth it. Sprinkle some on Giannis and then take Bam because, as you said, Bam's missed 25 games. They're coming down the stretch, short of an unforeseen injury that we can't predict. He's going to play in the rest of these games as they try to lock up that number 1 seed to Miami. And like we said, I mean, 25 games. Rudy's won a Defensive Player of the Year award, missing 25 games. So I think we take him out. Voter fatigue for sure. And considering that he hasn't been more impressive this season than he has in his MVP seasons, when Giannis, his other Defensive Player of the Year seasons, I'm talking about Rudy. When Giannis won, MVP the second season in a row, that his numbers were better than the season before. It's how it goes. You can't win an award, for the second year in a row, or even for a third or fourth time in the case of Rudy Gobert, without having better numbers than those previous seasons where you won the award. It's just they're not going to give that to you. So I think you look at Bam and Giannis, and you consider sprinkling some on both of them. Take Bam as the favorite, and then get some on Giannis because even if he doesn't get it, you still get that money back, plus 140 on the money for Bam there. So that's Defensive Player of the Year. The last thing I would say too about MVP, just add to your point, that net rating is roughly the same, but that plus minus cannot be ignored. I know not everybody loves plus minus, but you've got the NBA stat nerds out here quoting the fact that, the NBA stat nerds, by the way, are the number 1 cohort who is against plus minus as a relevant stat. But you can't ignore it when it's as sort of glaring as it is right now, where there's a 19-point difference per 100 possessions when Jokic is on the floor versus when he's not. Not even just missing games. I'm talking about in the game when he's on the floor versus when he's not. His team is 9 points. Is 9 points better than their opponent per 100 possessions when he's on the floor. They are -10 when he's not. It's just that simple. They're the third worst team in the West essentially without him, and they are the 6th best team with him. It's insane. So I think it's more impressive to take a team from the gutter and bring it all the way up to a prominent playoff contender versus a guy who's taking a team that without him is middle of the pack, maybe a 6 seed in the East, maybe a 7 seed, but with him should be a 3 seed now that they have another star alongside him. So, that's pretty much where we're at with it. I think, like you said, Jokic is the bet on the MVP right now for those odds. Giannis and or Bam on the Defensive Player of the Year, and I feel good about that. So that is all the time we have for you in this one. Had some fun talking about what's going to come on down the stretch here in the NBA. We'll continue to bring you all these videos for these games as well. Just wanted to get you something in here while we take a little break for March Madness with just one game on the Thursday night slate tonight. So until we see you next, happy betting.